Each year at our gaming boot camps, we usually have about 5 games that we teach the kids how to build. And there's always one that's kind of this big epic game, and they tend to have a lot more graphics, a lot more usability, and we kind of follow through step by step, and it just shows the kids how they can build a complete game from start to finish with real assets. So today I was going to walk you through how I actually get those games set up, how I come up with the ideas, and then also how I lay out the screens. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I do is I try to find an image pack that's kind of interesting. I'll take a look at some of the newer ones that have been released and try to get an idea of what type of a game I might build. Since these are platform games, there's a lot of image packs that are very platform centric. This is the one that I chose to use this year. It's got a cave/lava theme. It's got these little lava spouts that jump up. This one does have some artifacts that we're not going to use, things like the coins, and get these, go to the next screen here. It has some of these things here, like with the spikes, the torches on the wall. These actually have animation. It's got some ladders, some crates. We're not going to use all of these assets. It just tends to be too much. But I'm going to pick and choose certain things that we're going to use and incorporate them in. Once I've decided what the general layout of the game is going to be from an images perspective, I'll also pick a character or two, as well as some of the enemies that we're going to use throughout. So I'll show you those here as we get a little bit further in. But this is always the first step. I try to get some ideas about what the game should do and what the goals should be by looking at these different image packs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next step. So this is actually the final game. I'm just going to show you where I ended, and there's 2 levels to this game. This is level 1, so you can see it's quite long, and then we've got a boss here at the end and some other enemies throughout. But I wanted to kind of show you how the game ended, and then I'll walk through each of the individual pieces. So what I've got here is a bunch of different layers sitting on top of each other, and then down below I've got some different artifacts that I use to put them together. So the very first step that I always take is I actually sketch it out on a piece of paper. I just find that it's a little bit easier to get an idea of the flow through and how you want to move and how you want your hero to go across the screen and interact with it. I'll also pick the things I want my hero to do. So in this case, we're not going to be shooting things. He's actually got a knife that he's going to use to stab the enemies. So in this case, these enemies, you have to get quite close to them. So that was also part of the game and how I wanted to lay it out. Now I like to have multiple kind of depths to it. So each of these are platforms that you have to jump on and go up. And then I like to make things a little bit challenging as well. So things like the lava go all the way across the bottom. So if you ever fall, you end up having to run all the way back to the starting point in order to start over. Or in some cases, you actually can't get back. So I'll show you some things that I'm going to do there as well. But anyway, this is kind of the final view of how the game is going to look. So let me go back and start at the very beginning. So the program I'm using here is Inkscape. It's a program kind of like Adobe Illustrator. It is open source, so you can go ahead and download it if you want to build your own. I've previously set up a grid on this layout so that things snap together, and you'll see why that's important here in a minute. But I also have laid out a number of different layouts. Now this is the final version, so let me go ahead and go back and show you where I started. So I'm going to hide a bunch of these layers, and I'm going to leave just this one on. So once I decide on paper how I want my layout to look, I'm going to sketch that out so I can get a visual effect as to how this is going to work within the game itself. Now there's always changes that I make, and so I'll note a few here that I decided to change before doing the final layout. But I just go ahead and take the pen tool and I just kind of sketch out some of the things that I want. And then once I do that, I can then just duplicate them. So down here, what I've done is I knew I had these platforms that I wanted my hero to jump on and go from one to the next. Right here, I thought this would be an area where I'd either have rocks falling, or what I ended up doing is having the rocks come up from the lava flow down below. And then right here, I've got what might be considered like an elevator, where you jump on this one and then it goes up. And then this is a wall so that you have to go up. Now this year I'm introducing something new, which is like a save point within the game, which we haven't done before. So those save points are represented with these stars. Other things that I've put in, and these are just rough at the early sketch stage, is I've got these, which are enemies. I've just got them labeled with an E. So the idea is I come up here, I have to come down here, then come over here, go back up to the top. To get across, yeah, I had to come up, jump across. I ended up putting something up here. Then I was thinking this might be a boulder that's swinging back and forth or something like that, some type of an obstacle. In the end, I decided to do more of the rocks popping up. Again, another save point, enemy, rocks, lava, and then all the way over here is where I want the game to end, and this will be where our boss is. So first of all, I kind of sketch this out. I get a little bit of an idea of how things are going to work. This just lets me think about it a little bit more closely now that I can start to visualize it. And I can also get an idea, is this too long? Is it too short? Is it too high? And so on. So this is the very first step, is to get this initial sketch put in. Once I get my sketch worked out, then I'm going to start to add the platform. Now I do this in a couple of different phases because I want to be able to create these templates that I can export. So I'll add another layer, and this one here is going to be focusing on fixed assets. So these are going to be things that are part of the background, they're going to be part of the platform, but they're also not going to be things that the kids have to build and add. So you can kind of think of these as fixed things that are going to appear within the background. The asset pack that I've got, I'll just zoom in here, has all of these objects already created and all the different variations. So it's kind of like a little bit of a puzzle piece where you can put individual pieces together in order to make a little kind of thing hanging or a ground and so on. So I'll go ahead and import all of these here at the bottom. Now the reason the grid is important, and I've got my grid set, and this is because of the image size, 19.2 by 19.2, is that they snap together. So I don't have to be super careful about it, and then everything's going to line up perfect. So as long as we've got that grid that matches our images, we're going to be in good shape. So down here I've got all the different assets, and I've just kind of got them scattered around and grouped based on how they're put together. And then I've also built my own little platform. So this is something that our hero is going to stand on. And then I later copied them up here so they're easier to grab. And then these can then be grouped together a little bit later on as well. So I'll show you that in a second. The first thing I like to do on our platform is to lay out our ground. This kind of sets the frame for how everything else works. So we know our hero is going to start over here on the far left, and so I put this ground in, and then I wanted to have the lava. So the lava goes all the way across, and I made a couple different decisions here on whether the lava is in front or behind the pillars. It just gives a nice, interesting effect. And then I put this little platform here in the middle, and you can see this varies a little bit from my original sketch. And then over here is going to be where our boss platform is. And then I'm eventually going to put a door right here as well. But you can see these are all fixed assets. Now, when I originally put this together, I didn't put these in just yet. Those were these little signposts are one of the last things that I add. But they go on this layer because the kids aren't going to put those in. Those are going to be kind of background fixed assets. So once I've got the initial platform laid out, the fixed things, then I'm going to add the areas where I'm going to have the kids put their own objects in. So let's take a look at that. So now that I have the fixed platform, the next layer I add is what I call the platform add. Now these are going to be the parts that the kids are actually going to add. So let me just show that layer. So you can see these are going to be the platforms in which our hero jumps on. And I've got three different types of platforms. There's this large one, this smaller one, and then this one here that's just shaped a little bit different. Now in the game itself, we're going to have another type, which is going to be this one that goes up and down, but the asset image is the same. So if we scroll all the way over here, we can kind of see how our game is starting to come together. Now you'll also notice that I'm showing my sketch, because I want to be able to kind of see where I originally wanted to lay these out. Now you'll also notice that they don't match up perfect, because sometimes my sketch doesn't line up with once I start to put more of the assets in, which is perfectly fine. It's just a guideline. And then at any point in time I can go ahead and hide that sketch. So one other thing is that even though I've got these laid out, once I play the game and get it coded up within Construct 2, I may need to come back and adjust things. So don't worry too much about following it exactly. One of the things that I also always test for is this is a copy of our hero. So can our hero actually make these jumps? And that's an important piece. Now these here are going to be jumped through. So I can come down here and I can jump through them and land on top. These ones right here are not going to be jumped through. Those ones are going to be, actually these ones are going to be a little bit different altogether. These ones are going to fall once you land on them. You're going to be able to land on them, and then after 3 seconds, they'll shake for 3 seconds, and then they'll fall outright, and then they'll disappear. So that's going to be a little bit of a different effect, but those also aren't going to be jumped through, so we can't jump through them. But it's important that our hero can actually get through the game. So I like to put our hero on the game just to get an idea for a reference purpose of where he's going to be at for a size and also usability. The other thing that's important is that once we lay out the game, these images on this one here, on this platform ad, I'm going to export it as a template so that the students can see where to put the objects themselves. That just gives them a guide. They don't have to follow it, but it's a nice little guide. I'll show you how that works here in a little bit. All right, now we've got our platform ad. So these are going to be the ones that get added by the kids. Now that we've got that laid out and somewhat tested, we'll see where things need to be tweaked here in the final version. But you'll also notice that these are all grouped together so that they move as one. That way they don't come apart since they're made up of lots of individual objects. And now I can also hide the platform layer, and that's going to be the background. And so now I can just see the ones that the kids are going to add. Now this also lets me take a look at it and say, okay, is this too much or is it too little? Because we also don't want it to take too much time, and we don't want it to be too tedious of adding too many little blocks and so on throughout the game. But this looks like about the right amount to me, so I feel good about having this type of layouts for our individual platforms. So now the next thing I do is I'm going to start to add some of the other characters or objects to the games, our enemies, some of the things that we're going to collect and so on. And I just call those objects. So let me go ahead and show the objects. So now the objects, and you'll see a bunch of them popped up down here, and I didn't end up using all of them that I loaded in, but now you can start to see how the game is going to come alive. Now some of these objects are going to be things that are enemies that the user needs to kill. Others are just going to be things like these little jugs or this chest right here. And this chest is going to be our kind of a save point, if you will. So if we get to this point, we grab the chest, and then we die, we'll actually start here. We don't have to go all the way back to the beginning. So just like a regular save point in a game. Now these objects are going to be used as part of that template that I mentioned as well. So what you see on the screen right now is my sketch on the background, as well as my platform that's part of the background, and then the part that the kids will add in. So again, I can just visually look at this, I can zoom out, I can scroll through it, I can go back and forth, I can think about how I want things to interact. I can see, is this a big enough challenge that once we jump down here we can't go back? And it looks like it is. So once we get to this point, there's kind of no turning back. Then I also can make sure that I have things like a save point right before the boss, because if the boss kills us, we don't want to start back at the beginning of the game. And then these little gems are going to be things that give us life. So it's going to increase our life bar a little bit. So we just need to make sure we've got enough of those around. So once we get here, is this going to be enough to survive, or are we going to end up dying and making the game too difficult? And we won't know until we play the game. But just visually, this looks okay. I kind of like the way this came together. And then back here is the door. This is going to take us to the second level. And in our game, it's going to be our final level because we're only going to have 2. But kids could build multiple levels, and this could take you to level 2. So that's how the initial layout of the game gets created. So the last step is to just add the background and then see how everything looks. All right, so this looks pretty good, but it's clearly missing something, and that's the background. I'm always amazed at how much a good background makes to a game. Now this theme, or this tile art, did have a little bit of a background piece, and I did tweak it a little bit, but it's something that a lot of these tile kits will have. So now I've already added that, and the order of my layers is important because this one's going to be the furthest one from the back, and then the rest of them are stacked on top. So we've got our background, and then platform add, and then objects. So let me go ahead and show the background that I added. Now this background is a little bit dark within Inkscape, but that's okay. It'll be lightened up once we import it into Construct 2. I have it semi-transparent right now, which is why we see the guidelines behind it, but that'll all be exported with a nice white background, and it won't look that way. So I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit here. So now we can start to get an idea of how that final version is going to look. We've got our hero. I'll just place him on the screen here. And we can kind of get an idea of how this is going to work. Now you can see we've got a little bit of reflections on some of these rocks, which looks really nice. And then if we scroll over here, I don't have anything in here for the lava popping up, but you'll see that in the final game. And we can just scroll through and we can see how everything looks. Now you'll notice the background is just a repeating image over and over again, and it looks like it's a much further in the distance. There's a lot of things that we could do to make that background pop out a little bit more, but for this game here, this is all we're going to do is just have a static image. So this is largely the final version. You can see I've hidden my sketch. We can go ahead and show that again as well. That's going to sit logically right on top of the background, so we'll be able to see it. So you can see how close in some areas it is, and then how far off in other areas it is. But in general, it matched pretty close to what I did. And I don't bother to go back and tweak it because that sketch is just for my use only. So that's how I lay out the first layer in our game. It doesn't really have a name, just kind of lava cave right now. Now let me show you just what I did for level 2. Alright, so here's level 2. You'll notice there's a lot of repeated artifacts, and the reason for that is I don't want to create new enemies and new kind of platforms for the second level. The second level is meant to be a lot easier to add since we've already done a lot of the work and a lot of the logic. It's just a matter of coming in and maybe making it a little bit more difficult. Now this second level is pretty straightforward, but the whole point of having, and this is more of our boss level than the second level, but the point of a boss level is that you've got a lot of enemies. You may have to have a little bit of strategy in order to get it to work and to go through. Now, I haven't refined level 2 or the boss level just yet, and I have coded this up and I've noticed some areas that don't work, so I haven't come back and edited the template just yet. But as you can you might be able to see this too, but this is too far for our hero to jump. He can't get up on top of here. The other thing that I ran into is I couldn't jump on this, and then of course if this fell and then I died and I respawned at the beginning, there was no way for me to get back. So I tweaked these around a little bit in the final version, and I made this a fixed platform, and I lowered this, and I think I added another level or another platform here as well. So this is our boss level. You can see we've got a lot more enemies. We've got some health along the way so that we can rejuvenate, and then I also wanted to make sure that our hero could get up here, so I had to make a few adjustments to this as well. And then this is meant to be our final boss. Right now I just have him as a little bit larger. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do here. I don't want to introduce another character, but I do want him to be a little bit more difficult, so you've got to hit him 2 or 3 times as many times to kill than some of these others. So anyway, this is how level 2 came about. Let me just disable all of these, and I'll just show you what it looked like from a sketch standpoint. Most boss levels are pretty simple. This didn't really require a lot of effort on the sketch side. One thing I did want to do is I wanted to have a top up here. I wanted to have something kind of coming down that wasn't just the background image. So I actually created something there. And all I really wanted to do is have our hero go from left to right and then be able to attack the boss. So that's what I came up with from a sketch. And then once I added the sketch, I went ahead and added the platform. And here you can see, again, these are fixed, so these won't be things the students are adding. But these are our things falling or coming down from the top. And then I do plan on having more lava pop up through here, which makes sense since we're crossing this little platform with the lava. And then all the way over here to the right is going to be our boss area. So let me go ahead and add this next one in. So here I added in these will be the things that the students add. So we've got the bosses, and we've got the enemies, some of the blocks, and then also the platforms. And then this one I didn't set the objects on a separate layout. So right now they're all within the same layout. But the process is very similar. And then the last thing I'll just add is I use that same background. Again, just to repeat it across the back, and then you can see the final version, and then I can take that sketch off as well. So there we go. So there's the boss level, which does look a little challenging. So like I mentioned, I have coded this up. There are some bugs in it that I needed to tweak, and I haven't updated the template just yet. But once I've done this, and I've got this laid out, what I do is I export 2 images. One is going to be the fixed information, and then the second is a template. So let me go ahead and show you how those turned out. So by combining those layers that are going to be fixed, so our background and then our platform and then those objects, I'm able to combine all those together into a single image. And so this is just one PNG file. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can get an idea what it looks like. And this is going to be our background. So this is going to be something that the students just import in one time and then don't have to do anything else with it. And then they have all of this to work with. Now what we'll do is, since these are solid and fixed and we can either run across them or we can't jump through them, we're just going to go ahead and use a transparent sprite in order to lay this out as ground. And then you'll see some of these things are floating, but that's okay because there's going to be a platform here as well. The second image that gets created is this one, and it may look funny right now, but it's because it has a transparent background, and this is just showing it as black. But if we zoom in a little bit, you'll see what's going on. This is going to be what I call the template. So this is going to be where all of those platforms need to be added. These are all of the things you see here are things that the kids are going to add to the game. So each one of them is going to be a separate sprite. There's going to be the 3 different platforms, and then we've got things like the chests and the enemy and so on. So this gets loaded in as a template. It'll be invisible or hidden at runtime, and then this allows the kids to know where to put these individual platforms and where to set the bosses and so on. So it works out really, really well. So let's take one quick look at the final version of the game. So here's the game in Construct 2. Now there's still a few things that need to be worked out, but you'll see it looks exactly like the original images that I had within Inkscape. But this one actually has the characters all on it, as well as things like the platforms and some boundaries for our enemies. So let me just scroll all the way over here. Now the way this works is there's 2 images, and I have them locked right now. But if I unlock my background, you'll see there's 2 images, and they're sitting right on top of each other. One is our background, which has all of the fixed assets, and the other is this one here, which is this transparent template. And this just allows the kids to know where to put everything on the game. So at runtime, this template is invisible, so you can't see it, but it just allows them to know where to put. So you can see here, you can see, okay, I need to put one of these platforms, and then underneath here there's the little brick or the little vase, and then this template I have set to 25% transparency just so that you can see it, but it doesn't really get in the way of you building the game. So now the students just need to come through, add in all of the different pieces where the template shows, and then we have to put all of the logic in as well. And then you'll see here on the ground, or these fixed areas where we can't jump through, we just have a single sprite with solid, and it's also got a transparency set, and we have it set to invisible at runtime so you don't see it. So that's how I end up creating our layouts and our games for our big epic games within the Gaming Bootcamp. If you're interested in joining us this year, tickets are on sale now. I've got 3 dates here in Sioux Falls. You can go to sdgamingbootcamp.com to find out all the information. So if you got any questions, let me know.